Welcome to the Creative Condition podcast with me, Ben Talon, illustrator and creativity coach, founder of the Creative Condition, artist and writer. I bring 20 years of creative industry experience and a lifelong love of creativity, a fundamental pillar of human happiness, to you through ongoing personal exploration and the shared experiences of others. You'll get a nourishing mix of creative industry professionals and people far and wide using creativity in ways that can take our learning to the next level so we can maximise our unique blend. The show's been supported from day one by Illustration X, a tremendous illustration agency representing a shining global roster of illustrators and animators over at illustrationx.com. The music for the show is by Dirty Freud, who you can listen to now on all good streaming services. And for everything else, for my coaching, resources and inspiration, head to thecreativecondition.com.
Yeah, although I will tell you, in 2001, starting an office in March and having 9/11 happen, what is that, 6 months later, and the phone stops ringing for 3 months. That was, different than COVID, but it's similar in impact. So as someone that has run offices or owns companies, like these kind of events, they do happen.
Today I'm joined by Sibling Rivalry co-founder Mikon van Gastel. Mikon knows a thing or two about change. Starting an agency 6 months before 9/11, riding through COVID, and right now in this upside down world with the poly crisis, including the AI revolution, we are talking about adaptability, diversity right across the board through creativity, changing, looking after people, mental health, and what it looks like to run an agency in the future. This is the Creative Condition. How you doing, guys? I hope you're well. Welcome to the show. If you're new, it's a joy to have you on board. Thank you for tuning in. I am your host, Ben Talon, founder of the Creative Condition, creativity coach and illustrator of 18 years. I'm also a writer. I do a lot, and that's why I love to traverse far and wide, talking to so many people across the creative industries, far beyond the creative industries, because creativity is a part of all of our lives. It is a part of the human condition. That is my passion. That is the bedrock of everything I do. And it's a pleasure to have you here with me. How have you been? I hope you're well. It is so trying out there. So trying. I emphasize it at the start of every show because I'm constantly jumping through hoops myself, trying to manage a lively brain, anxiety, stresses, but I also have a lot of joy. I want to caveat, the negative stuff by saying that I have one of those minds that is simply highly sensitive, and that means that we experience the world maybe more intensely than some other people do. Long-term listeners will remember my 200th episode with the brilliant Jen Graneman, who is the world's leading expert on introversion and high sensitivity. Just after Jen's book came out, Sensitive, The Power of a Thoughtful Mind in an Overwhelming World. Now it's a real manifesto, and it's an explainer for brains like mine. And I have had so many conversations, even just this week, with people who are struggling in some capacity because it's very hard to manage these brains. I've been turning to meditation, to Buddhism, philosophy. I've been talking to other people who've suffered, picking up tips. I have been trying to put things in perspective, but ultimately, it's hard work being a human in this era, and that is why I wanted to talk to Mikon van Gastel today. Mikon was an utter joy to talk to. He is a film director, co-founder and CEO of New York and Los Angeles creative agency Sibling Rivalry. He's worked on globally groundbreaking music performances for U2, the Eagles, Peggy Gou. And last year, he worked with Hewlett-Packard Enterprise to deliver a groundbreaking visual experience inside the iconic Las Vegas Sphere. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's mental. It's absolutely bonkers. It's been described as signalling a new era for brand innovation and creativity. But more importantly, Mikon is a fascinating character, a lovely guy, and full of insights. And that's what I wanted to bring to the show today. So I know, as a one-man band, operating as a creativity coach, as a consultant, as an illustrator, as a writer, and many, many things, I have to change my coat many, many times in any given day, let alone a week or a month or a year. To make this thing work, had I just stuck with being an illustrator, it would have gone one of two ways. I would have been shitting myself now, as AI has aspects of this industry in the crosshairs, pinching words from Mikon which were said before we got on the air and started recording. Or I would have given more time and dedication to it and I would be flying because I've got a distinct style. I will never know. I made a decision to adapt and diversify and move into broadcasting and media and interviewing and writing because my passions go far and wide and I have a lively brain that needs variation. So that was my choice. So I'll never truly know what would have become of the illustration had I focused on it. But I'm just very glad that I have all this going on because it gives me a one-man band version of what Mikon is talking about today as the co-founder of Sibling Rivalry. An agency with many, many employees working globally, looking after the livelihoods of people and having to stay fluid enough to survive the polycrisis in which we live, the biodiversity and climate crises, the transformation in politics, in you name it. It's upside down, isn't it, in this world? And so many of us are trying to pivot and find our arse with both hands. That is beyond belief. No wonder we're in a mental health crisis. So Mikon brings so much value on that basis to this show. I would love your feedback. I always love hearing from you guys. Get in touch about anything, whether it's a mental health topic I've covered that you want to discuss if you're just feeling down, or about this episode, any previous episode, if you would be kind enough to rate, review, or subscribe to the show on your chosen platform. That really, really helps. Even better is telling a friend, as word of mouth is massive. I love this thing. It is my life's cause and passion. So cheers for all the support you guys give me by listening. Welcome if you're new. I hope you'll stick around. The show is sponsored as ever by the founding sponsor Illustration X, who are a global illustration and animation agency working right across the arts in so many different disciplines, representing an incredible roster of artists globally. They're brilliant. They helped me get the show off the ground. They suggested it in the first place, and I wouldn't be here without them. So thank you to those guys. Check them out at illustrationx.com. Please consider supporting the Ukrainian Institute, a wonderful organisation supporting a beleaguered and embattled Ukrainian creative community in a horrendous time of war. Have a look, ui.org.ua, doing some incredible work. Share a piece. Share it on your LinkedIn, Instagram, stories, whatever. If you can go one bit further, you can support somebody, you can mentor somebody or commission them, amazing. We don't have to worry about that right now in the UK. We're very blessed. So let's use a bit of that gratitude and help these guys. All right, enough of the business. Thank you. If you want to work with me directly, I'm doing many coaching programs now, including an illustrator-specific module. It's awesome. It will elevate you. It will help you establish your tone of voice, your brand, get on top of your portfolio, and we'll dig deep in the actual coaching session, which runs for an hour, where we get into everything. Your origin story, your hopes, fears, dreams, the lot. Will help realign you and get you that forward motion and flow and help you to pivot in this crazy upside down industry. So get in touch about that. There's also the flagship pit stop session. That's my big one. Big deep dive. We go through everything. No stone is unturned in a session that takes between 3 to 4 hours. We can split it to work for your schedule, but it will, again, show you so many things that are going on in your world that you don't even see because it's your picture. And this is why therapists have therapists and coaches have coaches. Let's work together. It is a massive session. It is intense. It is personal, but it will really help you to see with clarity where you need to go. And I will give you actionable recommendations to move forward with and exercises and all sorts. And if you love it and you want to work beyond that, I have longer term programs. I've got 3 long-term clients as we speak. 6 month to a year programs in which we set goals and I whip your ass into shape. Nah, I'm sensitive to the characters. I can be quiet, I can be loud, I can be strong, I can be gentle. Whatever is needed, I'm very empathetic. And I love this stuff, so get in touch with thecreativecondition.com/coach. Without further ado, let's get into it. Mikon van Gastel, co-founder of Sibling Rivalry. Oh, and I should also say you will have to forgive for the first few minutes, slightly worse audio quality. We had a bit of a tech hitch and we resolved it pretty quick and it's not too bad, but that's what it is. I'm sorry, not the BBC. Cheers, guys. Enjoy the show.
Oh, look at you, going big. I mean, listen, we're in the midst of a massive transformation, right? Like our business, just like so many other businesses, are are being changed by AI and everything else happening in technology. And, I mean, I think for me personally, my whole career has been like water. I was a graphic designer, going to school in Holland, which is kind of like the mecca of design, right? I end up moving to the United States to go to Cranbrook, which everybody was like, wait, why would you leave Holland to go to the United States? Like, isn't Dutch education the best education in design? Which was really about sitting in typography class, designing footnotes, being bored to tears, thinking that, wait, hold on, so designing books and posters, that's going to be the rest of my life. I really don't want to do that. And that was right at the time when deconstructivism was hitting grad schools, both in the UK and in the United States. Raygun magazine, Emigre, Print, I magazine all came out, and all this work was being published that was coming out of CalArts and um, Cranbrook and Yale and Royal College in the UK. And I'm like, hold on, I want to do that because it was incredibly expressive, right? It was all about understanding the rules, which I knew because, I was being taught traditionally Swiss design. Um, but then breaking the rules, right? And using at that point critical theory to kind of attack these notions. So I remember the real breaking point ended up being the Zoo TV tour of U2, believe it or not. I ended up going to the concert and I'm standing there and it's like design, animation, storytelling, emotion, performance. And once again, I was just like, hold on, I put two and two together. I was like, I need to get out of here. So I ended up going on an exchange program to get out of the country into the United States because you had to apply to these schools and you had to go. And I couldn't afford to fly back and forth from Holland. So I was like, I don't care where, I just need to get to the US. Then the tickets are cheap and I can go from there. I applied to Cranbrook, ended up going to Cranbrook. That was the school I really had targeted. But it gives you a good sense of like, I kind of like flowing with where the energy is and kind of trusting my instincts. And I did that for 2 years. And at Cranbrook, it's a, it's, you can compare it to it's like the modern equivalent of the Bauhaus. There's no classes. There's an artist in residence. And then other than that, it's like, you're basically creating your own curriculum and your toughest critics are the students around you that are there. It's a grad school only, so only 150 students. It was the most amazing thing I did. It was the best decision I ever made. And then from there, again, these kind of seminal moments in '95, which was my first year. God, I just dated myself. The first year at Cranbrook, Seven came out, and Seven changed the game. It woke up everybody again to the notion of title sequences and title design, right? So as I kind of unlearned everything I learned in Holland in my first year, I focused my second year on really exploring design and animation and thinking about storytelling in motion, which I had no background in. Um, and I ended up going to Imaginary Forces. So straight from Cranbrook, I ended up going to IF in LA. Um, so again, it's like I kind of love I don't really have so much of a set path. I like how culture and a changing environment, like so in this case, like AI, kind of changes your destination, right? So it's again to me, it's an exciting time because this is gonna create a ruckus once again, right? And we just need to, for us as sibling and as kind of the leadership of Sibling, we need to create an environment in which people thrive and feel confident enough to navigate these waters, right? But yeah, I mean, it's an exciting time. I think it's a little nerve-wracking, but exciting things happen then, right?
So something I'm interested in there then. So you're the kind of following the flow. I find this interesting because there's a real synchronicity there with the way my career's gone. And I'm interested, is this something, how much of that is innate? Like what's your background in terms of kind of childhood personality? Like, is this, have you been, have you always been a person that's had a trusted instinct? Or was it stumbling? What did that look like for you?
I think and it's funny enough, it's a straight link to the name Sibling Rivalry. I was very driven by an older sibling, my brother Pablo. Um, and I'm very close to him. We're like best mates, and brothers. So it all ended up great. But we were 16 months apart, and he challenged me at everything. So he was, always beating me in sport, always beating me in games, and it just made me very competitive. And it made me also, if he was doing one thing, I would do something else, right? So that's a big part of. So, for example, at the match at first, I distinctly remember when I got there, everybody wanted to do title sequences. I did a couple of them, and then I was like, okay, I've done this now. And then this project for the Baltimore Ravens came in, which was, like doing a film in an NFL stadium for 70,000 people. And I remember when that job fell on the table, we were always sitting around with all the art directors, and it would be like, okay, who takes this job? Nobody wanted that job because there wasn't a title sequence. And I was like, I'll do that job. That's interesting. So I think, yeah, I think it is something that I ended up developing as I grew up, is that I tend to kind of, if everybody goes left, I tend to go right or get interested in right, right? So, yeah, I think that's something that's grown over time. And it's probably also a little bit, I mean, boredom is maybe not the right word, but it's like I like challenging. I like new things. I like the ability to be able to have a conversation with a famous athlete and then turn around and have a conversation with a famous architect or with a CEO of a tech company, right? It's not like I just want to do one thing in one industry, and like I actually like the breadth of what the world has to offer, and I like working in different sectors at different levels with different kind of people. And but I think, yeah, it's an interesting call out. I think it's probably grown from when I was a child.
It's really interesting indeed. Yeah. And I completely echo that. Just that sheer curiosity of the human condition and what that looks like in different people. Because surely I think the majority of it, okay, maybe that's too sweeping. But I would say that a significant portion of us are led by curiosity. That's what attracts us to this, not necessarily a love of a singular craft. Don't get me wrong, some people fall in love with a craft. That's their niche. That's what they do. But I think that a lot of us are just curious, and it's no surprise to me to see a lot of people disconnect from their passions when they do one thing for too long.
I think so. I mean, it's funny because I was thinking about this conversation earlier, and in some ways, I always say, like, imagine or sibling rivalry is a work in progress. Like, I feel like we got the rocket into the air, but we haven't turned the turbo booster on. And I think what happens to a lot of people, not even just creatives, but people and companies, is they do something that's a seminal moment. They get known for it, and then they repeat it for the next 5, 10 years because clients keep coming back for that thing, for that project, for that look and feel, for that experience they design, right? And I think in some ways it propels someone, a person or a company, but it can also, I think, in the long term, it could almost become a bit of an anchor that ties you down. So I think, especially in this world right now, like, we have Sibling is a hybrid company. We have a films division and we have a brand studio. One is up, the other is down, and vice versa. It's a constant back and forth. Like we work in a lot of different sectors, automotive, like technology, sports and entertainment. They go up and down. I mean, just think about what happened during COVID, right? Entire sectors went from going at 100 miles an hour to zero, right? So diversity, I think, both for you as a person, but also as a company, diversity in jobs, in sectors you work in, projects that are only a month versus projects that are 6 months long, right? The combination of things keep things fresh, create, I think, an environment where curiosity can really shine, right? So I think that for us is something we really push. within the studio is the diversity of clients and opportunities, and that's hard. It's hard for people because it stretches the resource team, it stretches our creatives, but I think it keeps the mind fresh. So I really believe that that's an important thing to create and cherish.
I think so too. Um, I want to get more into the kind of structure of the agency, but actually, first, I'd love to hear the origins of Sibling.
It's a funny story. I met Joe Wright, who's my partner, in 2001 when I actually started in Imaginary Forces in LA. I then moved in 2001 to start the office in New York. And Joe came that same year and he was looking for a job and he met with a friend of mine. And she was like, "Oh, you should meet this guy, Mikon. I think you guys will really get along." Well, at that point, I didn't have the money to hire another creative director, but we met. And we went out that night, and every night for the next 10 years, we became best friends. Our girlfriends at the time became best friends. Um, but I always had this rule, I kind of saw it as I grew my career, that the one thing I was never going to do was start a company and bring any friends or family into the company, right? So after IF, I started a design and production company. My partner at the time, she went into real estate. She didn't want to do it anymore. And so I closed it. And the first person I went to was Joe. And I was like, man, my partner, she wants out. I'm going to close this thing. I need to look for something else. And I remember Joe, who was at that time running Trollback. He walked over to his door and he looks to the left, he looks to the right, he closes the door and he's like, "Mate, why don't we start a company together?" I'm like, okay. And this was 2011 when the market was like going down. We didn't even think about it. We just kind of blindly were like, okay, let's go. I think we both had trust in each other. And we did the one thing we did agree on very quickly was that we both came from a company where production was very dominant, and we wanted a company that was design led. So the fact that the two of us were designers and we were the co-owners was a big part of what the DNA of Siblings still is. It's very much a creatively driven company. And off we went. And, the name, I think, in many ways, because everybody always asks us, it reflects kind of our relationship. We both have older brothers. We're both great mates, but at the same time, we've always been competitive. I always kept an eye on him over the years, like, what do you win? What did you win? Like, are we bidding against each other? Because that happened too. But at the end of the day, so that's the rivalry part. But at the end of the day, it's also we're very much like brothers also. So that's the
Mm.
origin of the name. Joe came up with it. I would always give him that credit. Uh,
Yeah.
and then also he's English, I'm Dutch. He's a Hamilton fan. I'm a Verstappen fan. Like so, it's all there. You know the drill.
You mentioned, the way the market was 2011 earlier, and of course we touched upon it briefly there, but the world today is a very turbulent place, let's say.
Mhm.
What does that look like into running an agency in that environment today? You must have to, when you said about the flow, having to flow earlier, that must be pushed to the maximum in today's world.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like I said, I think being fluid in a diverse amount of sectors is really important since things fluctuate so much. I think an openness to smaller projects versus only chasing the bigger projects. Um, I think in many ways every opportunity to me is a foot in the door, and I trust my team implicitly that once we always say all we need is for someone to crack open the door, we'll do everything else. So, I remember the first project because I also work as a director. I got through doing the end tag for the brand, right? So it's a job where typically you would be like, wait, an NTAC is not the sexiest project, but it was a way in, it was a way to build trust. And I worked
What's
with
an in-text?
NTAC is like doing the logo animation at the end of a
Oh, of
commercial.
course. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
branded end tag. Which especially, in the 90s and the 2000s, there was a lot of that kind of work. Now it kind of just gets thrown in. Um, and or it's part of a branding exercise. Like nowadays, when you brand a company, you brand them not only statically, but you brand them also in motion. But it's a good example of how to take a small opportunity and drill down in it and turn it into something more. And again, I think it's really like over time, Sibling really started as a motion graphics company, but it has really become a hybrid design agency, brand studio slash film company, right? So it's changed tremendously. And in doing so, the behavior also has to change. You have to stop thinking like a vendor and you have to really start thinking of like a partner. And that is very much about longevity. It's not about like, oh, I'm going to do this project and try to get an award out of it. No, it's about building relationships, right? So I think as the company has changed, the attitude of the company has changed. And I think the biggest thing that we're now really doubling down on is writing our own ticket, to your point of like, oh, the world is in turmoil. It's very dangerous to be formed by these outside sources, right? If if we're only doing work that's inbound, we're being shaped by the work that comes in. If you want to have agency as a creative studio, you have to seek the clients, seek the work that you want to do. So that's a big part of what we're focused on now. So that's, this podcast is something to that effect, which is step out into the world more, thought leadership, going to conferences, being more part of the culture, all that kind of good stuff. Outbound sales. Right now, we have almost no outbound sales. All our sales are inbound. So we're changing that. And so I think again, like I said, don't let the turmoil shape you. You shape the turmoil to your liking, right? That's really the goal.
That's really it, isn't it? And doing all of this stuff, there's always been the presence of guilt and doubt, as we all get, that little voice that goes, oh, surely you should just be promoting to your illustration clients. You're an illustrator. That's what I had for the longest time.
Yeah.
But it felt too good. If I felt too curious about the other things that were coming up just because I was an interested human. And every time I followed that stuff, there's been serendipity, call it what you want, but there's the doors have opened. People have come into my life and opportunities that are
Yeah.
aligned with that and where I am. And it's to this day, it's not easy. In fact, it's harder than ever to trust because I have two young children now. But trust it, I must. And actually, it's led me to this place where there is, I have a circle of, let's say, a circle of competence or circle of confidence. I've heard both used, but there is a remit. I know what I love to do. I know what I'm best at delivering, and I think
Hmm.
you do. You have to move towards that because that's yours, and you do it your way. Otherwise, like you said, if you're following the market, if you're responding to the chaos, my God, that's a scary prospect. If you're because you'd be responding every 20 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there's almost a certain amount of fearlessness also and taking chances, right? I've done projects over my career that I had no business doing. Like, we created an interactive space for IBM when, that had never been done before using technology that had just been in like I remember seeing it in a MoMA exhibit. We reached out to the coders that created that technology and then used it to create this interactive space. We'd never worked with an architect before that. We are now working with HPE on the Sphere, which is like I call it the Champions League of content. It's like those projects are so intense and the demands on the quality of the work. These immersive experiences where you're trying to create engagement to 17,000 people, right? It's like it takes a lot of trust and faith in your team and collaboration across multiple, parts of the business on the client side, on the Sphere Studio side in this case. But those are the projects that propel us further and drive curiosity, right? So
Mhm.
it creates so much energy in in the company when those kind of projects are around. They're all encompassing, but they're amazing opportunities that keep things fresh.
And new medium, new technology, risk or not, IBM don't come to you unless they believe in what you're doing on the creativity side.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and that comes down to reputation, right? And that's why the portfolio of the company is so important. The ethos of the company is so important. There's a certain trust within the clients that you know them, you respect them, you understand, the problem they're trying to solve, and you're not gonna relent until it's perfect. And that's something that you build over the years. I mean, I've been doing this for God, almost 28 years. I mean, it's crazy most of the time, right? And I think I'm not proud of one particular product project. I'm the proudest of building the company and building a career that's lasted as long as it has. And that's, built on trust really more than anything.
Yeah, it's fantastic to hear. And it takes, the experience I've had talking to many agencies, the ones that I think are truly great, there's a real bravery there to fight for time and space for the creative process to play out. How do you
Mhm.
go about that at Sibling? How do you create psychological safety for your staff and time to reflect and to ruminate, of course, because I just hear so many accounts now of everything wanted yesterday, spinning too many plates because of the economy and many other factors. How do you battle for that?
I think you have to be strong enough to stand up to a client and making them understand that no, we're not going to be ready this Friday. We need another week. And it's the best thing for the project, and therefore it's the best thing for you. I think in the beginning of company life, right, when you're just starting out, you just want to please, 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 please. So you're the yes man. Everything is always a yes. But okay, we told you Friday, but we want it on Wednesday. Yes, no problem, right? Like at a certain point, and I think it comes with experience, and also and the trust from the client allows you obviously to do this. And this doesn't always work, but it's to just really stand for what's best for the project. And I think it's also set the calendar yourself. Don't wait for the client and to set the calendar for you. Of course, there's key dates, and we always have to work towards those key dates. But I think it's important to really take control of the process. Um, and the other thing that I find, and I don't know if this is true or not necessarily, but I have this feeling that as time has gone on, the C-suite is getting younger, right? The average lifespan of a CMO, what is it, 18 months, I believe? I heard it's even less than that. But just think about that, 18 months. And a lot of these CMOs, so now CMOs are younger. A lot of them are actually coming from the agency world. So the days of, Nike going to Dan White and Dan, tell me what Nike is all about because we don't know, but you do, right? Those days are over. I find that clients now, they know their brand very well. They just need help expressing it, right? So that's a different process. So then you have a choice, and I think that it's a client dependent solution, which is some clients like it very formal, right? You take 2 weeks, then you present to us. There's other clients that want to be part of the process, especially if they've come from like agency world. They love being part of the process. Then that final presentation, that's not such a big marker anymore because you bring them along as you go.
Mhm.
The more formal way where you're quiet for 2 weeks and then it's the big ta-da, that's a lot of pressure, right? So I think it's really about listening to your clients and understanding them and seeing how you can carry them along. And through that, you create space for your own team to breathe. And right, and it's a different kind of energy between you and the client when you do that. So I think that's one of our ways. I mean, Joe and I've always given people a lot of autonomy at Sibling, and I think that's why people love working with us. We don't have a lot of turnaround. People stay for a long time. They're very loyal. So it's our job to make sure that these client relationships are run in a way where we create that space, both for the client, but especially also for our internal team.
And I think that autonomy is vital. I think that from the moment, it depending what your path is. In my instance, from the moment I walked into art college, people suddenly wearing their own clothes when you've come from school where it's all uniform and fitting in. It feels amazing, and people suddenly have got things they want to say and things they're into, and that's exciting. And if that is surrendered at professional level, then surely that just flies in the face of what's glorious about creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why it's so important to listen to creatives and producers also about what their goals and dreams are. We have a very, I mean, it feels actually corporate. It's a very formal review process, but it's really great. It's where people they write down it's a questionnaire where they write down, what they're proud of, what they've accomplished, what they want to accomplish next year, and then there's a peer review about how people experience this person, and the manager writes up, and then we meet yearly, and then we have check-ins. It's so important to keep an eye on people's mental health and create an environment where creativity can shine. And I think more than anything, that was interestingly it's one of the few good things that came out of COVID. During COVID, I think we all became so much more aware of each other, even though we isolated ourselves, like within, the company, we became much more aware of each other and how everybody's well-being influences the greater good, right? So that's been something that we work on a lot harder. We have like bi-monthly lunches. We try to get the company together once a year. It's hard because there's always someone who's directing or, um, we have an office in LA that's a remote office, and then New York is our home base. So it's important to bring people together as much as we can. But yeah, to create that kind of environment is key.
Does the kind of remote and the in the studio thing ebb and flow?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I mean, I during the pandemic, I moved to Miami. My wife is Cuban, and we're here with her family as they grow older. And I hate working from home. I hate it. I
Yeah.
miss the studio like crazy. If I was living in New York still and we lived there for 19 years, I would go in at least 3, if not 4 days a week. It's just I love the family atmosphere, learning from each other. There's nothing like walking around the studio and looking at work and discussing work, and people roll their chairs over and you have a review of work that's completely spontaneous. Right now everything is a calendar invite on Zoom. And so I miss that tremendously. And I think, it's a generational thing. It's a lot of people love working from home. But then there's also people, especially in New York, that have a tiny apartment and they want to come to the office because they enjoy the space of that. So LA, LA is a funny place. Like people, there's the driving is a real killer. So, they actually we had an office and nobody came in, so we're like, why do we have an
Mm.
office, right? So yeah, it kind of depends. It's funny enough, it's always kind of the same people that come in, and it's some people that sort of are in and out, and other people that are only there when there's like company events and stuff like that. And listen, it is what it is. We give people the freedom to do what they feel is right. The official rule is 3 days, and we love it when there's, a ton of people in there, but it's not every day.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still working out my version of it. I have I have a little studio built in my garden, which is nice, but I'm a people person, and being an illustrator, it's quite there's solitude that comes with that. The coaching, one of the motivations within that for me is just that energy. I think creativity is a shared condition, and I must
Yeah.
admit I miss that, and I've never worked in agencies, so when I get to go in there and interview them, I come away going, "Fuck, I want that."
Yeah.
Yeah, the good ones at least. When you come out and there's a real tangible static.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's everybody talks about that, which is like it's the hardest on the next generation, right? Mentorship over Zoom is very different than mentorship in an office. it's very different to hang the work up on the wall versus just screen share work. And but we all have to work as hard to kind of get as close to that as possible. I think, it's a very, and it's not a, I think it was the one of your other groups that you interviewed talked about that. Like in the 90s, there was almost like a badge of honor for working like 18, 20-hour weeks. It's not about that. It's like, it's being in the trenches together and working like, like, okay, we got to pull an all-nighter because there's a massive presentation tomorrow. And then that, like, it breeds like a certain culture that it's not so much about like how much the hours are, but it's like being in the trench together and helping each other out and all that kind of stuff. That's changed a lot. I don't see as much of that anymore as there used to be.
So I noticed that you'd signed Witness
Yeah.
recently. How many directors do you have, and what does such a talent acquisition look like? As in, are you always kind of scanning for exciting new talent?
Yes, I think on both sides of the company, but especially on the film side, scouting directors is an ongoing affair. Darren Folds, who is our partner head of films on that side of the company, he's constantly looking out for people. And that's also like as the business and the culture changes, your roster changes, right? It's like there's moments where very clean, modern aesthetic is the thing. Then it's like all about authenticity and the docu style, right? And then it's like, oh, well, there's a lot of negativity in the world, and now comedy is coming up, right? It's funny, like films has to really fluctuate with what's happening in culture, and then we Witness is a good example of a really creative team, right? They come from the agency world. They have a very distinct style that there's a lot of authenticity there. So, we found him to be super interesting. And then also when you think of them in relation to what we do in the studio, on the brand studio side, there could be some really interesting collaboration. So yeah, talents scanning is a daily occurrence, really.
And what does the balance look like between the directing, the film side of things, and the branding? Is there a focus on one or the other, or do they kind of run themselves?
They certainly do not run themselves. They both have their own teams running them. Um, they we collaborate across the company whenever it makes sense. It's not a must. Like if directors have relationships with other um, companies or post houses or editors, then they're free to work with them. But at the same time, especially, there's also work generated within the brand studio that needs directors. And most of the time we use the directors of our roster. We pitch it kind of as a, collaborative effort. But again, the same thing. If there is creative and we need a different kind of director and they're not on our roster, then, we seek elsewhere. We just, signed this woman, Anna Sophia, who is she's like a social first director, right? So it's super interesting. There's a lot of demand for her. So she's someone that, we're really hoping to plug into on the studio side as well, right? Because linear media is under attack. A lot of stuff is now, socially native. It's where it starts. And those kind of directors think about storytelling in a totally different way. And she's her own personality. So it's super interesting when we bring people like that in because it adds another layer of creativity, not only to the film side, but to the studio side as well.
And how do you feel today in regards, when you started Sibling and today? Like, are you constantly intentional about the way you're taking the business? Are there things you really want to work on? What are the motivations today?
I think my biggest thing is to maintain diversity so we can weather the storms as they come. So, if automotive is down, then okay, we're in sports and entertainment. If entertainment is down, then we have the technology arm. I think that's the most important thing. Um, it's always a balance. Like in my mind, Joe, my partner, and Lauren Hartstone, who is our executive creative director, she's also a partner. they really keep a close eye on the quality of the work. And that's super important when you're a brand like Sibling. I do think that even though we don't have a style, there's a certain premium quality to all the work that we do. So whether it's for, Apple TV Plus, or even when it's for, launching Philo, which is like they couldn't look more opposite. One of them is completely illustrated, right? Right, and it's characters, and the other is highly cinematic. The approach is still the same. Like I love that about, like, as everybody else in our business, I'm obsessed with Greg Hahn and Mischief, right? It's so clear what they stand for, and the clients that come to them come for a certain approach towards the work. And I'd like to think that we have that at Sibling as well, and it's really important for all of us to protect that, and especially Joe and Lauren are really minding that side of the business. My role is a little bit more like to keep an eye on the grander scope of it. I do that with Joanna, who's another partner, and find that right balance, between what industries are we in, what type of projects are we bringing on, trying to stay ahead of it as much as we can. I think one of the things we very quickly thought of this kind of hybrid form of two agencies. We've been doing that for a long time. It's now kind of a trend, and a lot of agencies are bringing live action into their capabilities. Clients are building agencies. We've been integrated for a long time. So we've been on this trajectory for a while, and we just continue to hone it.
I find it really fascinating. As somebody who's never really been in that world of agencies, I find it really, really interesting. And hearing that really just underlines the need to be courageous and to trust, a combination of instincts, but also just to be aware, to stay really aware.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination of both, right? On the one hand, there's a rigor to everything we do. And then on the other hand, there's an instinct to everything we do. And Joe, for example, is very instinctual, and Lauren is very rigorous. And it's great to have both. And I think it's, again, that yin and yang, that sibling rivalry, right? Like, even in our clients, we love that they challenge us. We challenge each other to make the work better. They should challenge us. We should challenge them, right? But at the same time, they're our partners. At the same time, they're our coworkers. So that yin and yang is in many aspects of the company. But you're 100% right. I mean, I think if you're hesitating right now, if you're fearful of making a bold choice or taking on something that's potentially a little bit outside of your comfort zone, you're not gonna make it. I think it's right now it's for the bold and the brave for sure.
Yeah, I mean, when you think 2001 and today, really, we are talking different worlds.
Yeah, although I will tell you, in 2001, starting an office in March and having 9/11 happen, what is that, 6 months later,
Oh,
and the
shit.
phone stops ringing for 3 months. That was, I mean, different than COVID, but it's similar in impact. So as a someone that has run offices or owned companies, like these kind of events, they do happen. And it's interesting. This was my former partner and we always left a certain amount of money in the bank at the end of the year. We never took all the money out of the company for a rainy day. And if you've ever been a company owner, cash is king. You can be really busy and go out of business if you don't manage your cash flow properly. And I remember, like, for example, COVID, we managed through that because that happened in March. We'd left, as always, Joe and I left money in the company, and it allowed us to weather the storm, keep our people employed. We didn't let go of anyone. Um, so these big events, they shape you and mold you, and they prepare you. Any of these things can happen at any point in time.
You guys must be quite resilient. I mean, that must be a lot. When you've got employees and you're running a company and these things happen, and 3 months without the phone ringing. I've had a quiet spell recently, and with kids, it's been really testing. And that's just me looking after me and mine. So running a company, that must be another level of adversity.
It's, I mean, it is sometimes I step back and I think about that. And I do think that during the tough moments is the moments when Joe and I come together and you feel the most responsible for your employees. When everything is great, things are great, and everybody's kind of, doing their thing, and it's a well-oiled machine at best, even though it's always tricky. We're always doing too many projects. There's too much stress. Um, but when the things get tough, and oftentimes it's of course related to the economy, it's like all of a sudden you become the sibling rivalry part, you become the parents, and you start feeling very responsible for everybody. So yes, it's a constant game with our financial team to just keep an eye on all that. The other thing that changed over time is, and sorry to get so nuclear about it, but it's payment structures, right? So it used to be that you would get paid quite quickly. Nowadays, sometimes you get paid 3 months later, 6 months after delivery. Sometimes it's 120. It's crazy. And for a smaller company, design company, production company, agency, that's a massive thing, right? Managing, like I said, managing cash. So that becomes a whole other thing that you need to manage. So aside from bringing in work and managing relationships, the that aspect of it is a big part of the equation as well. And it used to not be like that. It's something that just changed. And the bigger the clients are, typically the harder the payment structures are, right? The bigger the project is, the more jeopardy exists. So yes, you become quite resilient. Uh, and you have to think ahead. You have to be 3 to 6 months ahead for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, God, I've covered most things. It's a fantastic insight. In terms of any sort of takeaway advice for people, starting in this climate today. I mean, you've kind of said it, I think, but correct me if I'm wrong, but it is about understanding who you are and your story and what you want and how you express that. Is that right? Something you agree with?
I think it's really important to get yourself into a position where you can thrive. And whether you stay in that position for 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, your whole career, it doesn't matter. It needs to be a place that allows you to do what you're great at, what you're passionate about, and being surrounded by people that will mentor you and care about you, right? So I remember when I came out of Cranbrook, so I came out with a portfolio that was highly conceptual, right? This is like we were reading and talking about Derrida and Foucault, Roland Barthes, Baudrillard. So here I come to Los Angeles and I'm interviewing with all these companies, right? And they're companies that are doing motion graphics, branding, design, animation, TV commercials. And I'm talking about this portfolio. So I remember I went to one studio and the owner, and this goes right back to the competitiveness that I had with my brother, your very first question. The owner looked at my work and he didn't get any of it. And he looked at me and he was like, you know where you are, right? Like we do TV commercials. And I was like, what an idiot. Like he can't see past any of this. You can't see, okay, there's a theoretical idea behind the work, but let's talk about the work, and how it relates. And the work, at that point, I was very much interested in, like I said earlier, right? Design, animation, storytelling in motion. My final thesis piece was an art installation. I was really into architecture. Then I went to Imaginary Forces to interview. And I met with Garson Yu. He was still working there at the time. He looked at my portfolio and he's like, hold on a minute. It was literally in the middle. He stopped me. He called the partners. So he's like, go down to the partner office. In the office is Peter, Chip, and Kyle, who owned Imaginary Forces. I go through my book. Kyle Cooper stops me in the middle. He goes, wait, where are you from? I'm like, I'm from Holland, which is known for typography. Kyle loves typography. He's like, you have typography written all over your forehead. He looks to his two partners and he goes, don't let this guy leave without signing a contract.
Wow.
Back to your question of what is your advice? Go to a place where you can thrive. Be around
Mm.
people that get you for who you are. I think that's the advice I would give.
Yeah, that's music to my ears because I'm working on a kind of group offer workshop at the moment, which is about your lived experience. Where have you come from? What are you passionate about? What makes
Yeah.
you weird? What did you last
Yeah.
laugh at when you shouldn't have laughed?
Yeah.
Questions like this to really try to start to help people to value all of the good, the bad, and the weird, because I think we're really going to need it. I think
Yeah.
generic is going to get hoovered up by automation. It already is, kind of.
Yeah, when AI is scraping from all things that have already been created, like where's originality coming from? It's going to come from the soul. It's going to come from humanity, right?
Yeah, exactly that. Amazing. Well, this has been a joy, Mikon, and
Thank you.
yeah, I think it's been incredibly valuable for people to hear, and I really appreciate it.
It was amazing to meet you, and thank you for inviting me. And yeah, we're a little bit soulmates. When you explained to me your road and with illustration, interviewing, writing books, I'm like, oh yeah, that's similar to what I'm doing. That's awesome.
Yeah, I love it. I certainly times when I just have to sit down and I think, what are you doing? Like, there's just got so much going on. But then I've got a more pragmatic wife who's really helping me to kind of, with an action plan at the minute. So it feels like there's a little more method this year. So it's exciting.
Yeah, it's hard as like one of the business owner. Like I wear like the CEO hat one day, then I wear the creative director hat the other day, and then a director the other day. And then there's projects where I have to wear all hats at the same time, right? With Springer, it's
Yeah,
so big. It's like, I'm presenting to the C-suite, and then I'm directing the work, and then you're also working with all the animators day in, day out with the animation. I mean, it gets into, I joke I like design is for me is nights and weekends. It's my hobby. Like,
hmm,
aside from running the company, but it's when I'm the happiest. That's what's still amazing. My wife,
wow,
to your point of view, she looks at me, it's like it's Saturday and I'm like designing. She's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, this is what I love doing. That's my
yeah,
hobby. At the end of the day, ironically, I hate to say it, but
yeah.
I
Do you
still
ever
love.
does that ever? Do you ever feel bad about that? That you don't get to do it more in your role.
Um, no, like I said, I'm so proud of the company and um it takes a lot of work. And listen, it's not always easy, and it's not the don't get excited by any of the HR meetings, and there's a lot of them. Don't get me wrong, but no, I like doing both actually. I've always liked the business side. I've always liked the client side, as well as the creative side. Like I have no interest, funny enough, in like submitting. We submit work, sibling work to, for example, awards and stuff like that. It's not my thing. Like I want my client to be happy. That's the most important thing, and my people, right?
Yeah.
So I love design and I love running the company. I love it both.
Thank you so much to Mikon van Gastel from Sibling Rivalry for taking the time to chat today and give us some insights into what it's like running a creative agency in a fucking nightmare. It's not a nightmare. Maybe it is. It is. You know what it is, isn't it? It's a nightmare and a dream. It's a lucid dream. It's a trip. It's whatever you want it to be. I worked with a coaching client the other day based in California who's come from a broken Hollywood system, which is spitting out people who used to be earning well. And they're struggling because, Netflix and those kind of models have changed everything. And it's very hard now for middle learners to get by. So they're all scrambling, trying to pivot and work out what's next and how they can make and write meaningful TV and film. And he said, look, we have to work out our place in this wasteland playground. Love that. Love that. The language there, the evocative nature of that statement, wasteland playground. That's where we are. He said to me, here's a laptop. Go figure it out. And that's what it feels like, doesn't it? All these norms and these kind of repeat clients and stable income bits, it's all up in the air because everything's changing and everyone's working it out and we don't know where it's going to land. So we have to be able to juggle all them bits that are coming down around us. And I really thought that Mikon drove that home today and gave us a shining example of what that looks like. And even so, that brings no guarantees, but it gives us a sense of what we need to be in this modern creator economy. So I hope you took a lot from it. I would love your feedback. Please do consider sending it, ben@bentalon.com, if you want to get in touch. Always happy to hear from my beautiful and valued listeners, and thank you for that. If you get a chance to rate, review, subscribe to the show, I would really appreciate that. You can also check out the founding sponsor of the show. If you like illustration, go and check out their absolute glut of artists worldwide at illustrationx.com. You'll find animation portfolios, live artists, fashion artists, and also the news about the agency and the artists within, and the work they're doing globally, helping the likes of the Society of Artists Agents and the Association of Illustrators, who, by the way, I'm going to be doing a talk with in December, so watch this space. I'm going to be doing a talk about story and personality and, making it work in this era. So look forward to that. Cheers for tuning in, guys. We've got some great episodes coming up. Diary entries as ever. Go check it all out at thecreativecondition.com. If you want to work with me on the coaching front, I have got offers available now. It will elevate you. It will help you get into that forward motion, get on the path you need to be on. 10 plus years of intense study and observation and interviewing the who's who of this industry. I pull it all together into my Anatomy of Creativity framework, and it is there to design. It's designed to help you get out of your own head, see with clarity the way you need to go based on your story, your passion, your personality, and your situation. A lot of realism involved, a lot of small steps. So if that sounds good, thecreativecondition.com/coach. Drop me a note. We'll have a no obligation Zoom call. We'll see what's what. We'll be in each other's network. If nothing happens, that's fine. But if it does, I would love to work with you. Right, that's about it. Cheers, guys. Thank you for listening. Have an awesome week. And thank you once again to Sibling Rivalry, Mikon van Gastel, and Red Setter PR for setting that one up. Awesome, guys. Have a good one.